Welcome to the Reducing Insurance Journal, Negotiating with Insurance Edition. This is a weekly e-journal brought directly to your inbox. To subscribe, visit ridjournal.com. In today's issue, we are going to explore the topic PPO fee negotiations. You can listen to us as a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast tool. If you like video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, RID Journal. I am Naren Arul Raja, your host for today's edition. Let's dive in. My guest today is my dear friend and a foremost expert and authority when it comes to negotiating with insurance companies, Ben Tune. Hey, Ben, how are you doing?
Hey, Naren, great to be with you again, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Absolutely. And I think you have forgotten more things about negotiating with insurance than people remember. So how long have you been doing that, Ben?
You know, I started in 2007 and I launched my business in 2009. And gosh, many years later, here we are, 8,000 plus clients later.
Oh, that's amazing. So 16 years, lucky 16. I was born on the 16th. So, hey, you're going to say 2000, 2023 is your 16th year at this, right?
Oh yeah, it's been a fun ride, a lot of achievements over the year. More importantly, a lot of connections to gather pertinent information to help dentists throughout the country.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I know your company does amazing work. So I think you're going to share a lot of interesting insights and resources today. So let's dive in. So our topic today is PPO fee negotiations. Which insurance plans are not currently negotiating? I'm getting right to the heart.
Well, the answer is going to shock everybody, mainly because at this point, every insurance plan is negotiating at some level, right? And almost in every state, Delta Dental is negotiating. Now, there are some circumstances. I don't want to build up everybody's hopes that you're going to get a fee increase from Delta Dental tomorrow. It takes a lot of strategy, a lot of work, and a lot of negotiations. But there are some areas, like you might have Delta negotiate in the suburbs of or rural communities in a certain state, but they won't negotiate in the cities, right? Where there's a lot of in-network participating providers. But to answer that question and be short and quick about it, just about every insurance plan in 2023 is doing some level of negotiations.
That's really good to know. I think they are realizing that a lot of dentists are leaving. So I guess when especially if they are in a spot like you said in some parts of the city or whatever, then they're going to be much more open. And like you said, it depends on how much you know, right? If you know a lot, then you can negotiate smartly against them. If you don't, then you are in trouble.
That's right. Yep.
So if I only have Delta Dental, is it a lost cause to try to negotiate fees? Like we have many practices, even my clients, Ben, who only have Delta. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I think most Delta Dental only providers have that assumption that Delta won't negotiate, and that's because that's what they've been trained to know, or at least what Delta tells them. But what I'm finding, and I had this just yesterday in the state of Arizona, where Delta Dental came back and offered a fee increase to one client that made the attempts to negotiate, and the client just a mile down the street, who has not made any attempts to negotiate, didn't get an increase, of course, obviously, because they didn't try. But in the end, the only way you're going to know whether Delta negotiates is if you make a good concerted effort to try. A good concerted effort is not turning away when they say no once, right? They'll have to say no 4, 5, 6 times to finally crack that nut, to get to the right people and find at least the right resource or people on the insurance company side to talk to. It's not about insurance companies saying, no, we're not going to negotiate 5 to 7 times. It has a lot to do with location and how you ask and what leverage you're bringing to the table. But I would say if Delta Dental is the only dental plan that you have, it is 100% worth the try. And the fact that you're not participating with any other insurance plans, typically what I see is that you have an increased rate of success if you're only participating with Delta. So give it a try.
I think understand. So what you're saying is Delta is a business like any other business, and their job is to collect as much in claim, in fees from the employers, and then of course pay as little as possible in fees. So if you're only with Delta, you can use that as a trump card. You can say, well, I'm only with you guys, and if you're going to treat me like garbage, then you're not be the only one I'm going to be with. So you have some leverage. So, and like you
Big
said,
time.
sometimes they might say 4 no's, and eventually if you don't go away and they don't want to lose you, they might be open to it. Is that what I'm hearing, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say before 2009, whenever you submitted a termination letter to Delta Dental, they would try to negotiate with you. And then between 2009 and 2022, they stopped. Well, I say 2020, Delta stopped doing that. You sent a termination letter, they said, see ya, good riddance. They didn't really care. These days, when you submit termination letters, just about every insurance company is responding favorably by begging you to stay in network and offering negotiations where they previously declined your attempts to negotiate. But approaching Delta from that perspective of you only being on Delta is a huge position of strength for the reasons that you mentioned, right? You could leave Delta, you could join other PPO plans. At the end of the day, Delta's going to try to maintain your participation status. And what we're seeing is that they are most certainly negotiating.
That's awesome. Is there any meaningful impact in negotiating with smaller PPO plans like Emeritus, Guardian, Principal?
Absolutely. So what we see with these small PPO plans, and when I do an assessment for a potential client, we'll take a look at all the data, right? We see that Delta represents 50% of their patients, Emeritus 1%, Principal 1%, Guardian 3%, Aetna 5%. When you add up the impact, or at least the revenue from all the other PPO plans that are non-Delta, what you typically come to the conclusion of is that 40 to 45% of those plans can have a fee increase, right? And if Delta doesn't negotiate and you're in one of those circumstances in the city where Delta's not going to work with you, negotiating with the smaller plans makes a big difference. And what we typically see is that the small plans would account for anywhere between 7 to 13% of new revenue in a practice just from negotiating fees, if you negotiate effectively. And that's typically where the most of the increases come from anyway. For a city dentist. For rural practices, we typically see the Blue Crosses and Delta negotiating to where, at the end of the day, even with the small plans, you're looking at a 15 to 22% increase in total practice revenue just by negotiating fees. So every penny counts in terms of getting as much new revenue as you can, even if it comes from a single plan that represents 1% of your revenue. Still negotiate with them. It'll make a difference for you.
Right. I agree. Like you don't want to leave any money on the table. Like if you can, negotiate and get an extra 10 points or whatever the percentage, then you should do it.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think the biggest challenge will be for doctors in 2023 as we record this when it comes to negotiating PPO fees?
That's a good question. Right. Well, as you know, right now, there's a lot of challenges facing dentists with staffing shortages. When it comes to talking to insurance companies, all the traditional provider relations numbers, when you call them, they go straight to voicemail. And with doctors not having a whole lot of time to deal with the insurance administration or practice administration in general, what you usually find is a great deal of frustration, right? And not knowing where to start or where to go with this whole journey with fee negotiations, because you don't have enough team members. And the provider relations people aren't working for you anymore. They're not picking up the phones. They're not returning messages. So the challenge I see in 2023, especially if we see a downturn of the economy in a big way that impacts dental practices, is that doctors are going to be having to increase their game, right? Increase their commitment and their time and energy in 2023 to get almost any function done in the dental practice. But as it pertains to fees, we are going to see insurance companies making it increasingly difficult for doctors who are contacting them directly to negotiate fees. And they've already started that. I mean, how many of you have been on hold and then hung up on when you're calling provider relations or calling provider relations lines that you had in the past and they don't work anymore? Well, those measures, thanks to the pandemic, have created opportunities for the insurance companies to ignore you. Oh, we're understaffed. We don't have anybody to answer the phone. That's all total BS, right?
Right.
So you need to know, or at least work with somebody that has those relationships still in place to enforce your contracts and know exactly how to get a hold of these insurance plans, because that whole gatekeeping aspect of not wanting to talk to you is just only going to increase in 2023 and beyond.
Right. Are HMO plans negotiating?
Yes. So the one part of HMO plans that are not negotiable are the actual fees, right? So if the plan says that the patient only owes $200 for a crown, and that's all you get for that crown, that's not negotiable. The part that is negotiable with almost any HMO is the monthly capitation check, the per patient per month commitment. You know, if it's $1.50, I would negotiate that up to as high as you can. The legacy rates for HMO plans used to be in the $15 to $20 per hour, per month per patient. Right now, they're as low as $1.50. To me, $1.50 is unacceptable. You have to raise that, more than triple that, to a more acceptable level. But that's what you should focus on with HMOs, is the capitation check that you're getting on a monthly basis.
Right. What about Medicaid plans and negotiations?
Yes, in many states, not every state is Medicaid negotiating, but what we're finding, especially in the rural communities, almost any dental practice, Medicaid is desperate to retain providers. And that's a key function with Medicaid. If there's not a lot of in-network providers in your community, then Medicaid will negotiate, especially if they feel like you're going to exit the network. At the end of the day, they need to have providers on board in every community to serve the underprivileged children, right? Or people that have low income. So the government is very desperate to keep providers. And if you fit that criteria of being one doctor in 50 miles, the Medicaid programs will negotiate with you for sure.
Thank you, Ben. As we come to a close, I know you have been doing this for 16 years now. What resources do you have to help our listeners tackle their fee negotiation needs? And I know you are the founder and owner of Veritas Dental Resources. So give us some insights, please.
Absolutely. I invite everybody to participate in our PPO fee negotiating consultations. It's very much like a new patient exam. In this case, instead of performing x-rays or, poking and prodding and exploring, we perform an assessment on your PPO fees, your PPO structure in general, and we actually spend a great deal amount of time in it. We spend anywhere between 3 to 5 hours per inquiry to find out if you're eligible to negotiate, what the fee increases could look like, comparing your data in our confidential database against other practices that we may have helped. Of course, we use that information very delicately to avoid violating any antitrust regulations. But at the end of the day, we'll go through a full suite of a total review of everything that you're going to want to know about your eligibility for negotiations and how much is on the table for you to gain through our negotiating strategies. I recommend that you visit our website, schedule a consultation with us, and we'd be more than happy to deliver that. We spend a full hour with you on the phone to show you exactly where those increases will come from. And a lot of times we give you, if we can't help, if it's just 1 or 2 PPOs, we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to give you as much information as you can to make sure that that hour spent with us during these consultations is time worth spent. And it doesn't matter to us whether you enroll with us or not. At the end of the day, I feel like it benefits us when every practice engages in negotiations at one level or another. That keeps the system of checks and balances on an even keel with insurance companies. So we're going to give you all the information that you need in order for you to be successful, whether you choose to work with us or if you choose to work, through this whole process on your own.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable, right? I think if I'm like a business owner looking at it, like I'm a practice owner and my overhead is high and I'm working really hard and every penny counts, right? So even if I can get an extra 5 or 10%, now I can do it the hard way and be put on hold and hung up on, because they know you don't know the game. Or then I can work with someone like you, Ben, who has 16 years of experience. And like you said, just having a chat with you to just really analyze the situation, because correct me if I'm wrong, you have to submit your fee schedule to the insurance company. So you guys know what the maximum might be or might not be for a particular service, right? So you can push it closer to the edge as opposed to leave a lot of money on the table.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the number one piece of leverage that we have is data. We
Right.
know what practices, we know where they're at with their current PPO fees. And the doctors can't get together and share fee schedules with each other, right? Say, hey, here's my Delta fees. that's very much against antitrust laws and conspiracy to raise fees. So because we have access to that data, we can see where fees can be negotiated, or if the doctor already has great negotiated rates, we let them know that as well. But that data gives us all the information that we need to know and to really put a stamp of assurance on any project in knowing that we can achieve success in helping that doctor raise to a higher fee schedule level. The other part is in the antitrust laws, and you can use this if you want, is actually considered illegal for an insurance company to discriminate. There's a restraint in trade provision in the antitrust laws that prohibit insurance companies from giving you a lower fee schedule than the other doctor next door. But why do they do that? Well, it's because the other doctor next door is signing the confidentiality agreement. It's illegal for them to share that fee schedule with you under the law, but it's also a violation of the contract. If they do that and share that fee schedule with you, they're going to lose that fee schedule and maybe even be kicked out of the network.
Right.
So having a second set of eyes and a professional look over your PPO fees, somebody that has data, is going to be your best bet on knowing what's available from a negotiating perspective.
Yeah, I love Waze, right? Waze it has data. It tells me, don't go on this road. You're going to be stuck in traffic for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll tell me take a shortcut, take this road instead. It's the same thing. So you guys have data, and that's real time. So it's not like, oh, what happened 3 years ago, but what's happening right now.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Ben, for this wonderful episode. If you love what we do here at ridjournal.com, tell your friends, share a review on iTunes or YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe. Till we meet again, I'm your host, Naren Arul Raja.